Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Michael, and today, let me start by asking you a question. Have you ever met someone and thought to yourself, this is the person I want to build my whole life with? And then one day, that same person cheats on you and comes up with a bunch of excuses. That's exactly what happened to me. Before my wife, Addison, even opened her mouth to suggest that we should have an open marriage, which was just her fancy way of covering up what she was already doing, I already knew the truth. She had been cheating. At that point, there was nothing left to save. The marriage was already broken beyond repair, and I knew I had only one choice left: end it. But I also know that to really understand how it all fell apart and how we even got to the point, you need to hear the whole story from the beginning. So that's exactly where I'll start. I actually learned about her through one of my close female friends. My friend had posted a photo of herself and Addison, and even though it was just a casual photo, something about Addison grabbed my attention. I started bothering my friend nonstop, asking her to introduce me to the girl in the picture. At first, she just laughed it off like it was no big deal, but I stayed on her case about it. Eventually, she gave in and agreed to set something up between us. She organized what was basically a blind date, and honestly, I didn't know what to expect. But when Addison walked in, she was more beautiful in person. We hit it off right away. We actually connected. We shared this meaningful moment, and somehow I felt she was exactly what I had been looking for. After that night, we wasted no time. We exchanged contact information and immediately started texting, calling, and planning more dates. I was completely smitten with her, and it wasn't just her looks. Through our constant, never-ending conversations, it felt like we were aligned. We shared similar dreams, and emotionally, we seemed to move in the same rhythm. Naturally, we started dating exclusively. After about a year and a half of dating, we decided it made sense to move in together. We were already spending most of our time together anyway, and honestly, living together just made everything better. Another year and a half passed. Living together brought its own ups and downs, like any couple. So one day, I decided to make it official. I proposed to her, and she said yes. I truly believed we were going to be together forever, so we got married immediately. You would assume that we would be together forever, right? Looking back now, I realize that the warning signs were there, but I chose to ignore them. I guess when you're in love, it's easy to make excuses for someone you care about. What I didn't mention earlier was that about 6 months before I proposed to Addison, I started noticing some changes in her. She became distant, like she was physically there, but her mind was somewhere else. The affection she used to shower me with started fading. I knew deep down that she didn't seem to care about us the way she used to. I could feel her slipping away, but instead of facing it and having the hard conversation, I made a huge mistake by thinking that proposing to her would repair our relationship and fix everything. I convinced myself that if I put a ring on her finger, it would prove to her that she was loved. What I didn't realize back then was that you can't fix a cracked relationship by simply putting a ring on it. All I did was press broken glass together and hope it would stay in one piece. Spoiler alert, it didn't. But right after we got married, it felt like it was working. At least for a little while. Addison was loving again, and for a brief moment, it felt like the girl I fell in love with was back. But it didn't last. It wasn't just the lack of affection this time. She wouldn't open up when I asked her if something was wrong. Instead, she started talking about wanting things. And if I even dared to question whether we could afford it or whether it was really necessary, she'd get mad. She'd say things like, "That's why I never told you in the first place." I usually let things slide to avoid escalation. But that wasn't all. I also began catching Addison in small lies. She would tell me stories about what happened at work, and certain parts would seem a little vague. Maybe she would say she stayed late because of a meeting that ran overtime, or that she and a few coworkers went out for a quick drink to celebrate finishing a project. I wanted to believe her, so I didn't push. But then, later, when she would retell the same story, new details would pop up, details that didn't line up with the original version. One time, she said the meeting ended late because her boss was disorganized, but later, It turned out that they were celebrating a birthday at the office. Things just didn't add up. I started to pay closer attention. When I tried to gently point out the contradictions, she would immediately get defensive. Every time she reacted that way, I would back off. I told myself it wasn't worth starting a fight over what might be nothing. Her behavior didn't stop at the little lies either. Slowly, it evolved into something harder to ignore. Addison started staying out late more often than usual. At first, she would say she had to work late. That's normal, right? I thought so too. But then her excuse sometimes, when she came home smelling of alcohol, became celebrations with her work friends, random get-togethers. If it wasn't work, it was her friends. Always some new excuse. I didn't want to be that controlling husband who questions his wife's every move. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt and trusted her. Or at least, I tried to. It wasn't until our bedroom intimacy changed that I realized things were out of hand. When I reached for her at night, she would say she was tired, that work was stressing her out, or that she just wasn't in the mood. Whenever I asked if we could talk through this situation, she would flip it around and somehow make me feel like I was the one causing problems. I found myself apologizing for even asking. After a while, it felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Anything could set her off, and once she was angry, she would storm off or tell me she needed space. I kept calm. One Wednesday evening, I was just wrapping up at my own office when Addison called me. She said she was working late on some last-minute project they needed to finish up before morning. I didn't think much of it at first. It wasn't the first time she claimed to be swamped at work. So, trying to be thoughtful, I decided to swing by her favorite bakery on the way home. I figured, why not surprise her with some of her favorite snacks? A little gesture to brighten up her long night. Back then, even with all the cracks showing in our marriage, a part of me still wanted to believe that things could get better. When I got to her office building, I parked and headed inside. The lobby was pretty empty, just a sleepy security guard flipping through a magazine. I asked him if he could call up to Addison's floor so I could drop off some food for her. He looked a little confused and said, "Sir, most of the offices cleared out about an hour ago. Nobody's up there now." At first, I thought he was mistaken. But I thanked him, turned around, and walked back to my car with the snacks still in my hand. I sat there for a moment before calling her. I asked if she could remind me where she put some documents I needed. Just a random excuse to get her talking. As we chatted, I slipped in the question, "Still at the office?" She said, "Yeah, I'll probably be done in an hour or so. Just wrapping things up." I sat there, phone to my ear, listening to her lie so easily, like it was nothing. After we hung up, I remembered something. Months earlier, we had installed AirTags on our car keys because we kept misplacing them. I opened the app and checked her car's location. What I saw shocked me. Her car wasn't at the office. It was parked at a hotel about 15 minutes away. I didn't think. I just drove. When I got to the hotel, I didn't go inside because I didn't need more proof. Seeing her car sitting there, parked neatly among a row of other cars, was enough. There was no work emergency or a tight deadline. Just Addison choosing to be somewhere else, with someone else. The drive home was quiet. I kept going back and forth in my head. Part of me wanted to pull her aside the second she walked through the door and shout at her while watching her scramble for excuses. But the more I thought about it, the more pointless it seemed. I realized I didn't even want an explanation. What was the point of digging through more lies? She'd only deny it, twist it, flip it back on me. No, I decided right there. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to end the marriage. Later that night, she came home. She threw her bag on the sofa and started rambling about how this unplanned task had popped up at work, how everyone was under so much pressure to hit some imaginary deadline. She made up details, even names of coworkers who stayed late with her. I just stood there, watching her perform this little story, lying straight to my face without even blinking. I didn't call her out or ask any questions. I simply watched. In that moment, it was clear. There was nothing left to save, nothing left to fight for. I knew, without a doubt, that our marriage was already over. She just didn't know it yet. The very next morning, after finding out she was having something with another man, I woke up knowing exactly what needed to be done. First thing, I started liquidating the money we had been saving for a down payment on our first home. Quietly, and without saying a word to her, I moved the funds into my personal control and then used the money to buy physical gold and silver. I wasn't keeping them here either. I arranged for them to be stored in secure vaults outside of the United States, somewhere she and the court system couldn't reach. It was a long few days of careful planning, making sure everything was watertight, covering every detail. I even hired a divorce attorney right after that to prepare the divorce papers. I wanted everything lined up perfectly so that when the time came, it would be quick, smooth, and final. My behavior at home also changed deliberately. I stopped making any effort to pretend anymore. If she was going to stay out late, then fine. So would I. I started keeping my own late nights, not even bothering to tell her where I was going or when I'd be back. When she walked through the door, after being out with friends, I didn't ask a single question. I became a blank, unmoved, and unreadable wall. I didn't initiate conversations anymore, and when she tried to, I gave her the bare minimum. I could see the confusion sometimes flicker across her face. She couldn't understand the change. The thought of another man touching her disgusted me. She wasn't my Addison anymore. She was somebody else's, and might have been for a long time. After about a month of my completely pulling back or making any effort around the house, Addison finally decided to address it. One evening, she asked if we could sit down and talk. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. Addison told me she had been thinking a lot about what modern relationships look like. She said things are changing, and that maybe we were holding on to old-fashioned ideas about marriage. She said, "I still love you, but maybe if we explored other people, it would actually make us stronger." She had this look on her face like she was offering some wise solution, like she had thought long and hard about this, and was now presenting it to me like a gift. But all I could hear behind her words was one thing: guilt. She wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was trying to excuse what she's already doing. I just sat there quietly for a few seconds, then I looked her dead in the eyes and said as calmly as I could, "We don't need an open marriage, because this marriage is already over. You're free to go be with whoever you've been waiting for." I gave her two options right then and there. I told her she could start packing her things that night, or if she didn't want to, I would start packing mine. Either way, we were done. Addison blinked a few times like she didn't understand what she just heard. Then she started doing what I later realized was classic gaslighting. She acted confused, asked me what I was talking about, tried to twist the conversation into something else, as if I had misunderstood her, or was overreacting. It was honestly almost laughable, seeing how quickly she tried to make me question reality, when the truth was standing right in front of both of us. I didn't give her any more room to play her games. I told her very clearly that I knew about her affair, that I had known for a while, and that it didn't even matter anymore because the divorce papers were already almost ready. There was nothing left to talk about. Addison just sat there, frozen. For once, she had no story to spin, no lie to cover herself. She was completely speechless, and I didn't stick around to see what kind of damage control she would try next. I stood up and walked out. A day after that night, she started trying to talk to me. She pulled me aside one evening, all teary-eyed, and tried to convince me that I was mixing things up. She said I was reading the situation wrong, that I was jumping to conclusions, that everything could still be fixed if we just worked on it. Hearing her talk like that broke my heart, but I didn't argue. I just nodded, made it clear without saying much that there was nothing left to discuss. From that point on, I made it a mission to avoid being home as much as possible. I didn't want to hear her fake apologies or see her pretend like things could ever go back to normal. Meanwhile, the divorce process was moving quietly but steadily. My lawyer had everything under control, and the paperwork was coming together. All I had to do was stay patient and let the system do its thing. The idea was for Addison to move out once the divorce papers were ready, but of course, she refused. She felt that if she stayed, I would eventually break down and beg for her back. I decided to be the one to move out. I packed my essentials and left. I found a temporary apartment across town. Even during the dragging months of divorce proceedings, Addison didn't give up trying to pull me back into her orbit. She would send long text messages late at night. Some sounded apologetic, others accusatory, like I was somehow the villain for not giving her another chance. Sometimes she left voicemails crying, sometimes pretending like nothing happened, asking me to grab coffee or talk. It was exhausting, but I knew better than to let her get into my head again. I restricted all communication with her. If she wanted to talk about anything related to the divorce or the logistics of moving out, she had to go through my attorney. I blocked her number for everything except emails, and even then, I barely glanced at them before forwarding them straight to my lawyer. Looking back on everything, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you can't force loyalty, and you definitely can't glue a broken connection back together by just loving harder. If someone has decided to walk away from you emotionally, all the love in the world won't change their mind. Trust is fragile. Once it's broken, no matter how much you try to patch it up, it's never quite the same again. I should have trusted what I was seeing instead of making excuses for it. Another thing I've learned is the importance of respecting yourself enough to walk away when someone shows you who they are. I spent a lot of time tiptoeing around Addison's moods, trying not to upset her, but I knew I was losing myself. I realize now that staying silent and hoping things would magically fix themselves was just me disrespecting myself. The more you accept from someone who is mistreating you, the more they will keep pushing the boundaries. If you take anything away from my story, let it be this: love should never feel like you're walking on eggshells. If you constantly feel anxious, unappreciated, or confused, that's not love. That's survival mode. And you deserve so much better than surviving a relationship. You deserve to live and thrive in one. Never let someone convince you that your needs are too much or that you asking for honesty and respect makes you the problem. For you watching me right now, what would you have done if you were in my position? Would you have stayed and tried harder? Would you have confronted her sooner? I really want to hear your thoughts, so share them with us in the comment section. And if you know someone who might be stuck in a similar situation, share this story with them too. Sometimes, hearing that you're not alone is the first step toward finally choosing yourself.